please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Present.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Ingert.
Present.
Councilmember Forster.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. We have a quorum. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce this proclamation to recognize National Public Works Week. And as you can tell, I have our director here with us, Mr. Krass, and I'd like to read that proclamation. Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to sustainable communities and to the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Raymore. Well, that's appropriate at this time, isn't it? Whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees from the state and local units of government and the private sector who are responsible for and must plan, design, build, operate, and maintain the transportation, the water supply, sewages, and refuse disposal systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential to serve our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the United States of America to gain knowledge of and to maintain an interest and understand the importance of public work and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore I, Chris Turnbow, Mayor of the City of Raymore, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. I'll provide that with you, Mike. Would you like to say something? No, I'm going to pass. Appreciate the work you guys do. Also, now that I have a son in the business, I really do appreciate everything you guys do. All righty. Next item on the agenda are staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and Council, just a brief report from our department for the month of April. We did have a total of 7 new home permits issued last month, so things are picking up a little bit from a slow start to our year in 2023. Predominantly, I just wanted to share there is a lot of ongoing site work at the Commerce Center right now. As the council knows, this is the new location of Newly, so they wasted no time getting started on that project. In Raymore, they're adding the rest of the parking lot that the developer held until a later time that they had a tenant. So they're finishing the site work with respect to that. Starting tomorrow, I think they'll have the majority of their demising wall that will separate their space from the rest of the building. They're also working on what we're calling prep work, but it's a lot of connections for the sprinkler system and some of the different connections that they'll have for their equipment. And then we were going back and forth last week with Missouri DED to finalize all the agreements with respect to some of their state incentives that they got. So definitely moving full steam ahead. They've got 2 of the 3 of their bid packages submitted to our department for plan review, and they are still on track to be operational by the end of this year. So a lot of good work going on down there at the Commerce Center. I did hear this week that there are 2 prospective tenants for building 2 in the middle that would take up about 3/4 of that building. So 2 different tenants that would move in and split up that building as well. So hopefully in the next month there'll be some information I can share with the council on occupants for those 2 buildings as well. Last but not least, I just wanted to share staff-wise, last month, Drayton Vogel, our code enforcement officer, celebrated 4 years with the city. So many of you, I'm sure, have had a chance to contact Drayton, or some of your constituents have. Mr. Vogt is always on top of things relative to code enforcement, is very quick to communicate with residents and send out notices when necessary. So I just wanted to celebrate his time with the city, and that will conclude my staff report.
And he is very conscientious at his work, too. He's a good man. We're lucky to have him. Anybody have any questions? All right, Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Gress. I would ask Mr. Baldwin to make a report for emergency management this evening.
Thank you. I wanted to share a few highlights from the Emergency Management Department over the last 6 months or so. Back in November, I attended in Savannah, Georgia, a week-long conference, the International Association of Emergency Managers Conference. There were about 1,500 emergency management professionals from all over the world there. Got to network with some great people, attend some really interesting lectures, breakout sessions, hear some really interesting people talk. So very educational, very beneficial. We got through the winter weather season without any major issues. We only had a few days of any real significant snowfall, and all of that either was cleared out or melted within a day or two, so no real problems this past winter. We did have a couple days of some dangerously cold temperatures and winds. We were prepared to open up a warming center if we needed to, if we had a request from the public to do so, but we ended up not needing to do that. But we did have a facility ready to go as a warming center if we needed it. I have been talking with one of our local churches about serving as a tornado shelter. The pastor of that church is relatively new, so he and I recently met, got to take a tour of the church, kind of see how we can use the space, kind of build that relationship, and they graciously offered to let us use their facility as a tornado shelter if we need to. So I want to thank them for their willingness and their collaboration. A few months ago, I attended a training in Harrisonville hosted by the Red Cross. The focus of that training was really how to set up a temporary shelter, how to manage the different areas of a shelter, the dormitory, the feeding area, the reception area, how to manage the volunteers. Again, very interesting, very beneficial. I'm working currently with Cass County and Belton to host one of those trainings here locally, either in Raymore or in Belton, for any local people that might be interested in serving as volunteers. City Hall recently participated in the statewide tornado drill a couple of months ago. I know all of our local schools did as well, which is great. We're going to be having at City Hall sometime in the next several weeks. We don't have a date yet, but we'll be doing a fire drill as well. So that's a great opportunity, again, for schools, businesses, homes to kind of practice their fire drill procedures as well. I've recently been training with Chief Wilson on learning how to drive our big command vehicle. He and I had been meaning to do that earlier in my time here, but we just didn't get around to it. So I spent several days driving it and kind of getting myself familiar with how that vehicle operates both inside and outside. And I'll be planning on taking that vehicle to a few different events in the community over the rest of the summer and the rest of the year. So you'll probably see it out and about driving around town. A couple weeks ago, I presented a presentation at our Police Citizens Academy, shared a presentation on emergency management, some of the history of this field, different resources and information. That was very enjoyable. And then finally, I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind everybody about our tornado sirens. They are primarily intended to be heard if you are outside or if you are in your car. If you're in your home, hopefully you have a weather radio, television on, an alert on your phone. Most people probably can't hear the sirens inside their house. Again, they're primarily intended to be heard if you're driving or outside. And we get questions about that. I think every emergency management department gets questions about the sirens, but they're not really meant to be heard if you're inside your house. So with that, that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Holman.
So it's been a while, sir, and perhaps before you were hired, but when we bought the command vehicle, our intent was to pursue that being a mobile PSAP or having that ability at some point. I know we ran into some roadblocks with regulatory issues with the Mid-America Regional Council. I was just wondering if there's any update on the status of that right now.
I don't, unless maybe Chief Orion does, but if not, I can look into that. And
I would ask Mr. Murdoch to answer that question.
So you're right. We tried to pursue that through the Mid-America Regional Council. It was delayed essentially by the executive board at that time to look into the technology that would be available to actually do it. As you probably are aware, the technology exists to actually do it. It's a question of now the funding capabilities that Mark would have to put into it because it would be quite expensive. We can re-up our application for it, to try to make it a PSAP if we want throughout the 2023, essentially into 2024, we could continue to pursue that. It essentially is sitting there kind of in limbo and on hold right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Forster.
Thank you. I was going to say about the tornado siren not being able to hear it in your house. I believe Raymore, I get a text message, like you can sign up to actually be notified when there's severe weather. So if people are calling asking about why they can't hear it, it's always a good pitch to say,
Yeah, we
"We
have
got your back, don't worry."
we have the
Try to
Everbridge
say.
system that folks can sign up for.
So-
If you can hear the siren inside your house, great. But if you can't, that's not really the purpose of them.
I do want to add, actually, because that was a great thing that he just mentioned with the Everbridge system. We just got our yearly subscription statistics from the ESB for how many people within the city of Raymore are actually signed up for Everbridge. We went up again this year, which is excellent, and we're sitting now at somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 22% are signed up, which is actually a relatively high number in terms of the entire metro area. So we're doing a good job of getting people enrolled in that particular system. The longer we use the same system, Everbridge, and don't go back and forth between things, the more people will continue to get and the more people will understand those notifications as they come through. So it's starting to become more and more effective.
We didn't have to replace any mailboxes when you were training with the mobile command center?
we're all good.
Okay, good. That's-
No, sir, but he did break it. It's at Transwest right now.
Oh. Oh, well. Those things are fragile anyway. Anybody else have anything? Okay, thank you.
Wonderful,
Mr.
thank you.
Dearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. We do have a work session next week, May 15th. The topic of the work session is, it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to update the council on some of the latest ED projects that are going on. Some of those happen behind the scenes. You heard Mr. Gress actually update you on the warehouse and the possibility of two new tenants. Want to bring you up to speed on some of those projects that are still going forward. That concludes staff reports tonight. So.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Dearborn? Yep, Mr. Holman.
Sir, what year is our next charter review scheduled to begin?
We are 5 years out.
5, so we're midway there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we started that selection process in 17, so we even be a little closer than that. All right. Anyone else have anything? Okay. And if, Mr. Dearborn, you're all done? Okay, thank you. We have, next on our item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have only the one item under the consent agenda, which is the April 24th meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of that item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items, including City Council meeting minutes from April 24th, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend?
I'll second that.
Thank you, sir. Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I got a discussion first.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I reviewed the notes and I also watched the thing, so I feel comfortable to vote tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Motion is unanimous. Passes. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3800 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3800 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2023 capital budget to provide additional funding for the FY 2023 street preservation project.
Excuse me. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad?
I move that we approve Bill 3800, budget amendment for the cul-de-sac and Hubach Hill Road mill and overlay.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3800. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3801 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3801 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2023 capital budget to provide additional funding for the Mazuma Force Main project.
If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdel-Gawad?
I move that we approve Bill 3801, a budget amendment for the Mazuma Force Main.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second that
Mr.
motion.
Townsend? Thank you, sir. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3801. Any further discussion? You know, Michael, I always, when they say the sewer main at Mazuma, have we ever heard how that guy turned out that got flushed down that thing? I know he was in a bad way because he inhaled a lot of matter,
I
but
think-
did we ever hear, I mean, how he,
I think that's the last we heard,
Yeah.
was that he was having some lingering health issues.
and that's not something that could happen again, is it? I mean, I think the way we've kind of worked on the emergent nature of the system, it should prevent that. Well, that was a contractual.
It was
company
kind of an error on their lockout tagout procedures.
Yeah.
So if those are followed, no, it should not ever occur again.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. I was just curious every time I think about that. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have, the first item is rezoning of 103 South Jefferson Street. There is no bill number, but I will open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and council, the item before you this evening was a previously requested rezoning for the property at 103 South Jefferson from C2 general commercial to R1 single family. This particular property was the previous location of the Heritage Chiropractic and Leonard Law Firm. The owner of that property, the property has been for sale for a number of years now. The property owner had requested that they rezone the 2 parcels of the 4 within that property. Currently is zoned a mix of R1 and C2, so the property owner requested to make it all C1. However, in the middle of that, after staff had went through the process and published the public hearing, the owner did receive an offer on the property, and the buyer did want to maintain the commercial designation, so the applicant withdrew their application to rezone the property here a few weeks ago. Because we had already scheduled these for a public hearing, they were advertised in the paper, and thus the council should open and close the public hearing this evening.
Okay.
That concludes my staff report.
Thank you, sir. And the public hearing is open at this time. Are there any questions of staff on this particular item? If not, I'd entertain anyone from the audience who's here on this particular matter to step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. I didn't think so, so we will close the public hearing at this time and move on to the next item. Next item, could I please have the first reading of Bill 3803 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3803 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Harmon Construction Incorporated for the Raymore Activity Center Expansion Project in the amount of $3,086,932, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Musteen to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here tonight to present a contract recommendation for the 2020 bond issue for the Raymore Activity Expansion Project. Bids were received for the Activity Center in March. We received 4 bids, and they were a very close, tight bidding cycle, so it was good to see that. Because of that, we did a little extra additional vetting and reference checking and making sure that everything was the way it needed to be. Want to make one note, this contract is for construction of the facility only. Things such as the volleyball poles, the special flooring, those things will be purchased and installed once the building is constructed. So that's one thing that's a little bit different, but we've included the funding summary in there. Mr. Harmon of Harmon Construction is in the audience tonight, and we are happy to recommend award of this contract. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Musteen? Thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
If there are no further questions of himself or the construction company, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3803, award of contract to Harmon Construction, Inc. for the RAC expansion.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second that
Townsend.
motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3803. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3804 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3804 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2023 capital budget.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Hill to make a staff report on this item. Ms. Hill. Ms. Williams. Surprise.
Yeah.
Thought it was on. I apologize. Before you this evening for your consideration is a budget amendment for the 2020 General Obligation Bond Project, the Raymore Activity Center expansion. The contract for the RAC expansion exceeds the budgeted amount. There's bond premium from when Series 2020 and Series 2021, sorry, this is hard to say, were issued, as well as interest earned in the amount of $671,463. These are currently unallocated. Staff recommends amending the Park GeoBond Fund to allocate these to the RAC expansion in the amount of $671,463. In addition, there are funds previously budgeted to the Centerview Phase 2 project that are available. Staff recommends allocating $30,000 from the Centerview Phase 2 project to the RAC expansion project in order to fully fund this project. The total addition to the RAC expansion project is $701,463. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions of staff? Appreciate that. Any questions, Mr. Fearborn, on this item? All right. Well, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3804, budget amendment for the RAC expansion project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3804. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3805 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3805 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving and authorizing a contract with J&M Displays in the amount of $22,000 to provide pyrotechnic services.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Mosteen to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thanks, sir. Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is the contract recommendation for our fireworks display for the annual Celebration of America event at Recreation Park. This is for $22,000. This is a one-year contract with the option to renew for an additional 2 one-year contracts. That's always confusing to say, but pretty standard in what we have been doing previously. We did open this up for bid. We received 2 bids, and J&M's Displays provided the best financial investment for us, the best product in terms of the display, and the longest display as well. So we recommend J&M Displays. They are the previous provider for the past 3 years of the show that we have had. Happy to answer any questions.
And they've done a good job, too. Any questions of Mr. Mosteen? Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3805 to J&M Displays for the fireworks contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3805. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. And the last item on our agenda tonight, could I please have the first reading of Bill 3806 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3806 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Brock Miller Construction for the 2022 Police Firing Range Fence Project, City Project Number 22-415-501, in the amount of $468,000, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you this evening is a contract to install a chain link fence around the perimeter of the Police firing range, staff does recommend award of the contract to Brockmiller Construction. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions, Mr. Krass, on this item? It was talked about extensively at our work session. Didn't know if there was any follow-on questions, and there's a little bit of conversation going there. Any other input on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I was putting Mr. Murdoch at ease.
Okay. Mr. Barber, did you have a question?
I did, thank you, Your Honor. I know we didn't really get into it, but there's another component on this fence, and that would be for the water. Is that to do some kind of security over the water that's on that property?
We're currently discussing that, sir. There is going to be something across the water. No piranhas, no sharks. Just one electrical wire just laying in there.
Yeah, there you go. Ms. Forster?
When we do the water area, I'm assuming that's going to not be included in this budget. So is there any more room, or are we using all of the funds to do the fence now and not saving for some for later?
Once this is completed, we'll be doing a budget amendment, just like with these, to take this out of available fund balance.
Okay. Anyone else? There are no further questions. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Bilgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3806, award of contract to Brockmiller Construction for the police firing range fence project.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3806. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. See no one coming forward, so we'll close the public comment section. And as a welcoming home for a well-deserved leave of absence there, we'll start with you tonight, Ms. Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to the constituents that everyone's been very gracious in me taking the time on getting back here in person, but also in emails and phone calls and Facebook. Everyone's been very gracious whenever it's taken me like a day or two to get back to them. But back at it, and healthy little girl and excited.
Well, congratulations again. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also, welcome back, Councilmember Forrester. I wanted to thank everyone who ventured out to Jefferson City on Friday. The mayor and I had the opportunity to go down, as it's been said, to watch the sausage being made when it comes to the legislative session. Very interesting session to watch. If you haven't ever have a chance to go down and do that, I would encourage you to watch how a bill becomes a law in the Schoolhouse Rock and see it in person. It was very interesting. But the matter that was of our specific attention, obviously, was while we were there. And even though the matter did not come to the outcome that we wanted, we still were able to have a small victory with regard to the amendment that was made to the budget to allow for a study to the area. And I would encourage those, if you have the opportunity, to look at that study. Even though it's DNR that was requested and required to do the study, it's not just an environmental study. It also has some requirements in there, I believe, from some more substantial impacts to the area as far as housing and things of that sort, I believe, in there. So looking forward to that to come, for that to come out within the time frame that was allotted to them. But we're not done. As the mayor has said on several occasions, there's different strategies that we're approaching or entertaining that hopefully we'll be able to continue this fight. Oh, excuse me, we will be continuing this fight is the appropriate way to put it. And again, thank you to all the residents who have been leaning in various ways, in various capacities, keeping this in the forefront. It's no time to sit back and rest. But as we would say in the business, reconstitute, restock, refill your canteens, take a little quick breath, and get prepared to continue the fight. And again, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, and I relinquish my time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a point. In our weekly newsletter that was sent out last week, there was a reference made to the 54th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and I do want to recognize Erica Hill on that recognition for her service with Raymore. I know that when I declared that the first person I met in Raymore when I came up here was Ms. Hill to get the paperwork going on that. As far as what she does for the city with paperwork, licenses, custodian of records, just everything she's involved with here, just congratulations and shout out to you and the work you do for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Inger.
I'd like to say congratulations to Mr. Crafts and the proclamation as well. I've had the opportunity to utilize the services of Public Works for the city of Raymore, and I always have found them to be professional, timely, and very thorough in their work, so I'm very pleased with that. And then big congratulations to Drayton Vogel for his 4 years on. He's always very timely in delivering the packets to my house, leaving me enough time to review things before we get to the meeting, so thank you, Drayton.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Abdelwad.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick comment about the expansion of the RAC. A few years ago, when I started on the council, the big topic was we need a community center. We need a community center. And so it's just neat over the last 12 years to see that we've built that community center. We really looked into what our community needed, what our community wanted, what our community could support, and what we could build without any financial risk, really. And knowing at that time we really needed and wanted more. And as we always promise, it's coming and we'll do it responsibly. And so this is a great example of us doing the right thing responsibly, even though we had to be a little patient for it. But just really excited to see that building growing to continue to meet the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not going to repeat anything that's been said up here because I agree with it totally. Great comments. I will repeat this, Ms. Forrester, good to have you back, and thank you for adding to the population of Raymore, too. Appreciate that. And I do want to recognize our new Mayor Pro Tem. Great job helping with the meeting tonight, and look forward to more. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. And Mr. Ullman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have anything additional tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
I guess I have one thing. In the RAC, one thing that people might not have noticed is pickleball's going in. So more pickleball, less basketball, and sometimes that's nice because we already have basketball facilities, but we don't have a lot of other options. So that's nice to have something different.
Thank you, sir. And my comments tonight are going to follow up on what Mr. Townsend talked about, in that while our time in Jefferson City was long and was arduous, and I still think it was very meaningful, as is evidenced by the 139 yes votes in the House. I mean, that was significant. I don't think you'll find another piece of legislation that was proposed in Jefferson City this year that got that kind of support from the House side of the legislature. The Senate side's a little different. Their procedures are a little different. They're a little tougher to get past. As you saw this last week, one person can hold up pretty much the whole process, and that's what occurred. But it doesn't mean all is lost. There's again always next year. What was passed, Mr. Townsend referred to as the $100,000 appropriation into the budget for MDNR to do a study. I'm hoping that, and we're all hoping, that it also involves some of their own procedural matters as it relates to Chapter 260 and how they move forward. I know when we visited with them initially, many of their charts and designations were outdated and had not yet been updated in their manuals and books, and maybe this will give them an opportunity to update those items as well. And as you heard from Mayor Lucas, they're putting a moratorium for a year on any permitting processes, and maybe that'll allow for us to work more closely. As I mentioned tonight to Mr. Fleener, I don't know if it made the news segment or not, because we talked quite a bit on the front porch of City Hall here earlier today. But moving forward, we hope to have great conversations with not only our stakeholders, the City of Lee Summit, the City of Grandview, City of Belton, all the South Kansas City residents that have jumped into this fight against the landfill and in support of House Bills 909 and Senate Bill 590. The sponsors of those bills wish to bring them back again next year, so we'll be looking to hone the edge of the knife on that one to make sure we cut a path back toward Jefferson City on an easy basis so that we can maybe get this job completed next year. But maybe it won't be needed if we're successful in the other endeavors that we're taking on in this matter. So we'll a lot more work to be done. I think if citizens are looking for an area of focus, possibly candidates for city council in the city of Kansas City, and maybe those would staying on board with the city council and the mayor might be individuals that we want to draw closer to us in our efforts to at least eliminate that site as a potential landfill site. But I'm quite certain that the developers will continue moving forward with whatever they can do, and hopefully it's not much, given what the state has put into place and what the city of Kansas City has said so far. So maybe we are making headway, and we'll be able to successfully bring this to a closure in the near future. So we'll keep your fingers crossed, say a few prayers for that success. But I do believe that we are going to be successful, and I want to thank everyone up to this point, as Mr. Townsend said, all of the elected officials, all of the residents in the area that have worked very hard to support House Bills 909, like I said, and to campaign against the landfill at that location. It has been effective, it's been appreciated, and we will continue with you in our resolve in that fight. So that's all I have this evening. I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we move into executive session to discuss litigation as authorized by RSMO 610.021, subsection 1.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker? Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Ingert?
Yes.
Councilmember Forster?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
We will now move into executive session, and upon adjournment of that, we will come back out for adjournment of the regular session. Thank you.